The day my old life ended and the new one began, I was standing in my pajamas on the back porch, trying to fix a loose hinge on the screen door. The Pacific smelled like salt and diesel that morning, and the gulls were screaming at each other over a torn-up sandwich someone had left on the boardwalk. I had a screwdriver in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other when my phone started to buzz on the railing, face down, vibrating in small circles like it was trying to crawl away. I almost ignored it. Most people who call a 78-year-old widower on a Tuesday are either selling something or reminding him about his own funeral arrangements. But the number on the screen was long, full of strange country code digits that didn't belong to any cousin or utility company I knew. I frowned and answered. "Mr. Navarro?" a man asked, his voice smooth enough to slide off polished marble. "This is Elias Baum, calling from Alpenkron Bank in Zurich. I'm reaching out regarding the private deposit facility held in the name of your late wife, Mrs. Julia Navarro." My brain stalled. For a second, I thought he had the wrong person. "Who?" I asked, even though I had heard him perfectly. "Your wife, sir, Mrs. Julia Navarro. Our records show she passed away earlier this month. Please accept our condolences." I looked back through the open kitchen window. The house was too quiet without her humming to the radio, too clean without her stacks of recipe magazines on the table. Her urn sat on the sideboard, bathed in the pale light that slipped past the curtains. "You must be mistaken," I said slowly. "My wife never had anything in Switzerland. We've lived in San Diego our whole lives. We don't even like snow." On the other end, I heard the faint shuffling of paper, the click of keys. "Sir, the deposit facility has been active for 29 years. It is directly associated with your home address and your wife's passport. Our institution is obligated to contact the designated heir upon her death." My grip tightened on the mug. "Deposit facility?" I repeated. "You mean like a safe deposit box?" "Not exactly," he said. "It is what we call a private compartment, Vault C19 to be precise. Your wife visited our main branch in Zurich every year, without fail, to either deliver or retrieve materials." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound that startled a nearby pigeon into flight. "No, senor. You're wrong. Julia hated airplanes. She made me pull over the car if we had to cross a high bridge. The last time we left California, it was by train." "Nevertheless," the man replied, his tone unchanged, "immigration records confirm her entry into Switzerland on multiple occasions. I can send you copies if you wish. For security reasons, I cannot discuss the contents of the vault by phone. However, per her signed directive, you have 14 days from the date of this call to appear in person and claim or formally relinquish the compartment. If you do not, it will pass to the alternate beneficiary she listed." Something in my chest turned to ice. "Alternate beneficiary?" I asked. "Who?" "That information is sealed, sir," he said. "It is contained in the vault documentation. When you arrive, we will present you with the file." I stared at the ocean. The water churned against the pylons. The screw I had been holding fell from my fingers and rolled between the deck boards. "Listen," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "My wife was a public school librarian. She never had extra money. We scraped and saved for 45 years just to pay off this house. Are you telling me she was flying back and forth to Europe behind my back?" "I am not authorized to interpret your personal circumstances," he said, and for the first time I heard something human under the professional varnish. "I can only convey the facts. She maintained a private vault here, and she left explicit instructions for you to be notified. There is also a pre-purchased travel voucher under your name should you choose to come." A travel voucher, bought by Julia. For me, for this moment, I felt suddenly very old and very awake at the same time. "We will send the formal documentation by courier today," he added. Again, My condolences, Mr. Navarro. The line clicked dead before I could respond. I stood there for a while, listening to the waves and the rattling screen door, the phone warm in my palm. Julia's urn watched me from inside like a silent witness. Somewhere in Switzerland sat a metal door with my wife's name on it, full of something she had never, ever mentioned to me in almost 5 decades of marriage. I looked at the phone camera, at my own reflection in the dead black screen. Bushy gray eyebrows, sunspots, the deep grooves at the corners of my mouth. And for the first time I felt like a visitor in my own life. If you're listening to this and your stomach just dropped because you suddenly realized you might not know the person sleeping next to you, do me a favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, escribe en los comentarios desde donde me estás escuchando. I need to know I'm not the only old fool out there who trusted too much. My name is Ignacio Navarro, and this is the story of how I found out my wife had been feeding a monster I never knew lived in our family. Inside the house, the clock over the stove chimed 10, each ding bouncing off the tile like a little hammer. I took my coffee, set it down, and walked to the dining room. Julia's ceramic angels lined the shelf, small, cheap pieces she'd collected from flea markets over the years. One of them leaned sideways, its head chipped. She'd never let me throw it away. You had a vault, I told the angels, or her, or maybe the empty room. You had a vault and never said a damn thing. A car door slammed outside. I flinched, then exhaled when I recognized the rhythm of the footsteps coming up the walkway. My daughter always walked with purpose, like the ground owed her stability. My son dragged his heels like the world owed him everything. This was the first kind. "Papa," Lucia called, "traje pan dulce." I met her at the door. She balanced a white bakery box in one hand and her purse in the other. Dark hair pulled into a bun, sunglasses perched on top of her head like a forgotten crown. Grief had carved new shadows under her eyes. She hugged me tight, then pulled back to study my face. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. "What happened?" "Not a ghost," I answered. "A banker." She made a face. "That's worse. Sit. Tell me." We sat at the dining table where Julia had once laid out coloring books and library flyers and Christmas tamales. I told Lucia everything: the call, the vault, the trips to Zurich I hadn't known about, the mysterious 14-day deadline, the mention of another beneficiary. Her eyes widened. "Mama? In Switzerland?" she whispered. "No, no way." She would have told us. She told me about every flight she ever took. She even bragged about that time she flew to Denver and survived turbulence. "Apparently, she told the bank more than she told us," I said. The words tasted bitter. She tapped her nails on the cardboard box, her mind moving fast behind her eyes. "Okay, maybe it's not as crazy as it sounds. Maybe it's something simple, like, I don't know, a charity project or some inheritance from her family." "Her family never had money," I said. "Her father left them a rusted truck and a Bible. Her mother cleaned offices until her hands curled." "Then maybe she helped someone," Lucia insisted. "Maybe she was part of some scholarship fund and didn't want you to worry." There was a small quivering hope in her voice, the kind you want to believe just long enough not to suffocate. I thought of Julia sitting at the kitchen table with her coupon folder, celebrating the days she saved $3 on rice. I thought of the nights she and I counted pennies in a jar to afford Christmas presents. How many times had I told her, "We'll be fine when the next project pays"? How many times had she answered, "I trust you"? "There's more," I said. "The banker said if I don't go, they give it to someone else." Lucia went still. "Someone else? Like who?" "He wouldn't say." But in my chest, something ugly already knew the shape of that shadow. As if summoned by the thought, a loud engine roared down the street, too fast for the narrow block. It cut off abruptly in front of the house. We both turned toward the window. A black pickup truck, shiny and lifted higher than any practical vehicle, sat at the curb. Chrome wheels, dark tint, the monthly payment visible from here. Of course, Lucia muttered. A moment later, the front door opened without knocking. "Hey, old man," a voice called, bright and too loud for a house still in mourning. My son swaggered into the dining room like it belonged to him. Daniel was 42, but he dressed like a man whose mirror lied to him every morning. Tight jeans, brand-name sneakers, a t-shirt with some expensive logo splashed across the chest. His beard was trimmed into the shape he thought movie stars wore, and on his wrist gleamed a watch so shiny it almost hurt to look at. "You left your door unlocked again," he said, leaning over to kiss Lucia on the cheek before tapping my shoulder. "You trying to get robbed?" I studied him. Or rather, I studied the things he brought with him. The smell of cologne fighting with the faint trace of last night's beer, the credit card bulge in his pocket, the watch, especially the watch. It was thick and golden, heavy links catching the light from the window, a dark face with tiny, sparkling markers. The kind of watch they keep behind glass at the mall, the kind that costs more than any tool I ever owned. "New toy?" I asked, nodding at his wrist. "You like it?" He grinned, twisting his arm so it flashed. "Limited edition. Don't ask the price." "I don't have to," I said. Decades of estimating job bids had taught me to calculate value at a glance. That thing was easily $20,000. "How'd you pay for it?" Lucia shot me a warning glance. "Not now," her eyes said. "Not while we're still fragile." But Daniel only laughed and flopped into Julia's old chair at the end of the table, like he didn't feel the ghost settling beside him. "Relax, Papa," he said. "I'm doing fine. Got some side deals going. Opportunities. You wouldn't understand." Every opportunity Daniel had ever chased ended with someone else losing money. My money, Lucia's money, Julia's hidden jewelry. "You should be careful," I said. "Things like that make you a target." "For who?" He smirked. "Bank robbers?" Lucia cleared her throat, drawing the conversation away before the wind could shift to argument. "Daniel," she said, "Papa got a call this morning. From a bank. In Switzerland." His grin faltered. Not much. Just a flicker at the corner of his mouth, but I saw it. He tried to cover it with a chuckle. "What? Did you finally win some sweepstakes, Viejo?" "They called about your mother," I said. "She had a private vault there for almost 30 years. The air in the room changed. It's hard to explain if you weren't there, but sometimes you can feel the weight of someone's heartbeat, even when they're sitting still. Daniel's fingers tightened around the back of the chair. "Mama," he said, "traveling? To Europe?" "That's what they said," I answered. "Every year, always to the same bank, always to the same vault." Lucia watched him like a hawk. "Did you know about that?" she asked directly. "Why would I know?" Daniel snapped back too quickly. "I didn't even know she had a passport that still worked." "They said if Papa doesn't go, claim whatever's inside," Lucia continued, "the vault goes to an alternate beneficiary." Daniel swallowed, a small, almost invisible movement. "Well," he said, forcing a casual shrug, "then you better go, right? Before they give our inheritance to some random stranger." "Interesting choice of words," I replied. "Our inheritance." His jaw tensed. "She was my mother, too." "She also kept this from us," I said. "All of us. Makes you wonder why." He shifted in the chair, the golden watch sliding down his wrist. Lucia's gaze dropped to it, then back up, connecting dots she wasn't ready to name. "Maybe she was going to surprise us," Daniel said. "Maybe she was saving up to leave something for her kids and grandkids." He spread his hands, palms up, the picture of innocence. "Maybe she didn't tell you because you would have worried. You hate flying. She knew you'd lecture her about safety." There was a twisted logic in his voice, the kind that sounds almost reasonable if you want to believe it badly enough. Julia had always protected him from the fallout of his choices, told us he was just unlucky, just misunderstood, just going through a phase even when that phase lasted 2 decades. Lucia leaned forward. "Daniel," she asked quietly, "did Mom ever talk to you about money? Secret money?" His eyes flashed. "What kind of question is that?" "A direct one," she said. "Did she?" He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think I'd be living in a rented duplex and driving a truck with payments if I knew Mama had some Swiss treasure stash?" He pushed away from the table. "Look, I didn't come here to be interrogated. I came to check on the old man." "The old man?" He said it like a joke, but something sharp lay under it. "I'm fine," I answered. "Just trying to understand why the woman I slept next to for 47 years had an entire world of trips and money I never knew about." "Then go find out," Daniel shot back. "Get on the plane. Open the box. Bring back whatever she left. Maybe she wanted you to finally enjoy life instead of counting nails." He clapped me on the shoulder, too hard to be affectionate. "And when you get back, we can sit down like adults and divide everything up." Lucia inhaled sharply. "Divide?" she repeated. "She's been dead 3 weeks." "Grief doesn't pay bills," he said. "Mama knew that. She was practical." He checked his watch as if the time was laughing with him. "Anyway, I've got to go. Meeting someone about an investment." He kissed Lucia again, nodded at me, and walked out. He didn't look at the urn. The engine roared, and the truck ripped away from the curb, leaving the smell of exhaust and something like foreboding behind. Lucia stared at the door long after it. "Shut." "Did you see him?" she whispered. "When you told him about the vault? He wasn't surprised. He was angry, you know." I rubbed my temples. "He was something," I said. "I just can't tell yet if it was guilt or hunger." The afternoon slunk by. Lucia cleaned the kitchen that didn't need cleaning. I walked through the rooms like a tourist, seeing my own house with new eyes. Every closed drawer felt like a secret. Every locked box felt like a lie. Julia had kept a small room at the end of the hallway as her reading room, though with time it had become her everything room: sewing, paperwork, quiet phone calls. The door was closed now. The brass knob looked dull in the dim light. "Have you gone in there?" Lucia asked behind me. "Not since—" I started, then let the sentence die. My hand rested on the knob. It turned easily. Unlocked. Always in life she had insisted on privacy. "Women need a corner that belongs to them," she'd say. I had honored that. I never crossed the threshold without knocking. Now there was no one to answer. The room smelled like her lotion and old paper. Stacks of books leaned against each other on the floor, the desk covered in neat piles of folders, a ceramic cup filled with pens. A shawl clung to the back of her chair like she had just left it there on her way to the kitchen. For a moment, my knees threatened to give. I imagined her stepping in behind me, laughing, saying, "Ignacio, ¿qué haces husmeando aquí?" Then I remembered the cold Swiss voice and the word vault, and the idea of an alternate beneficiary, and the crushing tenderness twisted into something sharper. "Start with the desk," Lucia suggested softly. "If she kept records, that's where they'll be." The top drawer held what you'd expect: sticky notes, paper clips, stamps. The old calculator she refused to trade for a smartphone app. The next drawer down: recipes cut from magazines, letters from students, invoices for the library's book fairs. The third: our mortgage papers, insurance policies, tax filings she had filed more meticulously than any accountant. Everything was labeled, dated, boring. "Nothing," I sighed. "Maybe the bank man is crazy after all." "Mama wasn't," Lucia said. "If she was moving money around, there will be a ledger. She would never rely on memory. That was true. Julia didn't trust invisible systems. She wrote things down in actual ink, on smooth paper. When she started losing her hair from chemo, she kept a journal about it, describing each strand like a character. I opened the last drawer. At first glance, it looked empty, just a clean wooden base. I tapped my fingers along the bottom, and something thudded under the veneer. "There's a false panel," I muttered. Lucia's eyes widened. I pressed, and a thin sheet of plywood popped up, revealing a shallow compartment beneath. Inside lay a single hardbound notebook with a dark red cover, edges worn soft by years of use. No title, no label, nothing but a small black elastic band around it, like someone wanted to keep its insides from spilling too far into the world. My heart pounded as I lifted it. It was heavier than it looked, as if it carried more than ink. I slid off the band and opened to the first page. In Julia's careful, slightly leaning script, a date stared back at me. May 3rd, 1994. Beneath it, a line. Flight to Zurich. Meeting at Alpenkrone Bank. First deposit to C19 for protection. Protection. I turned the page. July 1995. Second trip. Increased deposit. Interest accumulating quickly. Still unsure. Page after page, year after year. Every spring or summer, there it was. A trip, a sum, a brief note. Sometimes she wrote a number and circled it. $25,000, $40,000, $52,000. The amounts grew. Between those entries were pieces of our life I recognized. Lucia's scholarship came through. Daniel says his new business will finally take off. Ignacio is tired but still working double shifts. Her words wrapped around the numbers like vines hiding rebar. My hands shook. "Dios santo," I whispered. Lucia leaned over my shoulder, reading faster than I could. "Where did she get this money?" she breathed. It was the same question echoing inside my skull. My last big construction contract had wrapped in the late 80s. After that, we lived modestly on savings and my pension. Every big purchase, the roof, the car, the braces for the kids, we had decided together, or so I thought. "Maybe the vault holds investments," Lucia suggested weakly. Maybe someone paid her back for something, a loan we never knew about. I kept turning pages. The entries changed. Lines grew longer, handwriting more frantic. "Daniel asked for help again. Says men are threatening him. Took from C19, couldn't refuse. Next year, back to Zurich. Refilled what I took for Daniel. The guilt is a stone in my chest." My vision blurred. Lucia's hand flew to her lips. "No," she whispered. "No, no." Another entry. "He promised this would be the last time. I believe him because I need to." Then, later, "He lied. Again." The numbers started to drop, not climb. Withdrawals scribbled, amounts crossed out, rewritten smaller. If Ignacio knew he would throw himself in front of these men, I can't let him. Better they devour me than him. My throat closed. All those years, those Friday afternoons she said she was going to visit a friend, the weekends she claimed she was at book club, the small, tired smiles when Daniel left after loud arguments in the driveway. The ledger had turned from a financial record into a confession. We reached the last pages. The writing was shaky now, letters trembling, ink smudged where the pen must have rested too long as her hand spasmed. 3 months ago, C19 nearly empty. I spent 30 years building it, and 10 bleeding it dry. All for a son who only knows how to ask. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to tell Ignacio that I have been lying to his face in the name of loving him. 2 months ago. Bank wrote, "If I die without claiming or assigning, C19 defaults to alternate beneficiary. I chose him." Better Ignacio hate me than get hurt by the people behind Daniel's debts. Better Lucia be free of this. The final entry, written 5 days before she died. If he goes to Zurich, he will finally see what I could not tell him. He will see the ghost I fed. Maybe then he can bury it. Maybe then he can be free. My chest felt like it was splitting along the seams. Lucia sobbed quietly into her hands. Daniel's laugh from earlier seemed to echo from the walls, that careless, sharp-edged sound that had lulled Julia into one last promise over and over again. I closed the notebook gently. It was never a treasure, I said. It was a wound. Lucia wiped her eyes. We have to go, she said. We have to see what's left. We have to see what she was protecting us from. I nodded. Through the open sliver of curtain, I saw the black truck drive past again, slowly this time, windows too dark to show a face. My son circling the house like a shark that smelled blood in the water but couldn't yet find the source. Julia had built herself a private vault of metal and a private vault of silence. The metal was in Switzerland. The silence was here, in red ink on lined paper. One I could open with a token and a plane ticket. The other I had just broken. I slipped the notebook inside my jacket, feeling its weight over my heart, like armor and accusation at once. "All right, Julia," I murmured to the empty room. "You fed that monster for 30 years. I'm going to find out how big it grew, and then I'm going to kill it." 2 days later, I stood in an airport for the first time in 20 years, clutching a worn passport with my picture and a letter from a Swiss bank, about to chase a secret my wife buried on the other side of the world. The airport didn't feel real. The last time I had flown anywhere, the terminals had ugly carpet and metal ashtrays screwed into the walls. Now everything was glass and polished steel, reflections of strangers sliding across the floor like ghosts. I clutched the travel voucher the Swiss bank had sent. First-class seat, car service on arrival, hotel reserved under a name that felt like it belonged to another man. Lucia walked beside me through security, adjusting her scarf every few minutes like she couldn't decide whether she was cold or scared. She insisted on coming as far as the gate, even though she wasn't flying with me. "I don't like the idea of you going alone," she said. "You're not as strong as you were." I grunted. "Strength has nothing to do with it. It's answers I'm after." She linked her arm through mine. "Even so." The loudspeaker called my name, mispronouncing it in a way that made Lucia laugh under her breath. "They're announcing you like you're a politician," she said. "I'm just a widower with questions," I replied. "No one important." "You're important to me," she said, squeezing my hand. "And you were important to Mama. Remember that, no matter what you find there." Her words sank into me like warm sand, but they didn't settle the storm building in my chest, because underneath everything, the shock, the confusion, the fear, there was a new emotion rising like a tide. Hunger. Not for money, for truth, for the chance to look my wife in the eyes, even if only in memory, and say, "I finally understand." The boarding call echoed through the gate. Lucia hugged me tight enough to press the air from my lungs. "Call me when you land," she said, "and don't trust anyone who smiles too much." "That includes Daniel," I answered. She nodded grimly. "Especially Daniel." I walked down the jet bridge with the red notebook pressed against my ribs beneath my coat. The air in the plane smelled like leather and disinfectant and a hint of champagne. But my mind stayed fixed on the ledger entries, deposits growing like a mountain, then collapsing into jagged withdrawals. Julia's handwriting slanting as the years wore her down. The word protection repeated like a prayer she never said aloud. The flight took 11 hours. I didn't sleep. Instead, I stared out at the endless ocean below, thinking of my son, the black truck circling the block, the watch gleaming on his wrist. In the ledger, the early entries had been hopeful, Julia believing she was building a cushion for the future, a private net to catch us if I fell. But the later entries, those told another story. The slow bleeding away of the vault's contents, the desperation of a mother feeding an invisible hole, the fear, and the final line. If he goes to Zurich, he will see the ghost I fed. I closed my eyes and tried to picture Julia alone in a cold European bank office, sliding stacks of cash across a counter. Who had she met there? What threats followed her home? What monster had grown strong enough to swallow 30 years of savings? The wheels touched down with a heavy jolt. Switzerland was gray and crisp, mountains cutting into the clouds like the teeth of something ancient. The car service waited with my name on a placard. Mr. Navarro, not Ignacio, not Papa, a stranger's version of me. Zurich looked like a city built by clockmakers, every corner precise, every street clean enough to eat from. But something beneath the perfection made my skin prickle, like all the tidy buildings were hiding quiet, polished secrets of their own. The bank, Alpenkron, stood near the river, its stone facade carved with symbols I didn't recognize, eagles, scales, keys. Everything about it whispered wealth and silence and the promise that whatever went in never left, unless invited. The security guard inside was tall, smooth-faced, polite in the way people are when they're paid extremely well not to be rude. "Mr. Navarro," he said, bowing slightly, "we've been expecting you." Expecting. The word struck me. Julia had planned this moment years before she died. Had she imagined me walking through these doors? Had she hoped I'd never have to? I followed the guard through a series of glass corridors that felt more like a museum than a bank. At the end of a long hallway waited a woman in a tailored charcoal suit. She had silver hair pulled into a sleek knot and eyes the color of cold water. "Welcome to Zurich, Mr. Navarro," she said, extending her hand. "I am Frau Keller, the director overseeing Private Vault C-19. Her handshake was firm, decisive. "Your wife was a valued client here for nearly 3 decades. Did she ever tell you why she kept the vault?" I asked. A shadow crossed her expression, professional, controlled, but real. "We do not ask questions about motives," she said. "Only identities." Mrs. Navarro was consistent, punctual, discreet. Whatever burden she carried it alone. The words felt like a blow. I swallowed it. "May I see the vault?" "Of course. But first, as per her instructions, there is a file you must read." She led me to a small private room with a table, 2 chairs, and walls thick enough to choke sound. On the table sat a sealed folder with my name printed on the front. I reached for it, but Frau Keller placed a gentle hand on the folder. "I must warn you," she said. "What you find in here may not be what you expect. Sometimes the truth we seek is not the truth we wish for." My throat tightened. I didn't come here for comfort. I came for the truth. She nodded once, removed her hand, and stepped outside, closing the door behind her. The room fell silent. I sat, broke the seal, and opened the folder. Inside were documents, copies of Julia's passport stamps, signatures, transaction records summarized by year, and a letter handwritten on pale blue paper. It was addressed to me. "Ignacio, if you are holding this, it means I am gone. I did not hide the vault from you out of shame or greed. I hid it out of love and fear, 2 things that often look the same once they rot. You will see the numbers and wonder where they came from. Some of it I earned, some I saved, some I borrowed against futures that never arrived, and some I was forced to gather. For our son, for the debts he could not outrun, for the men he promised he would never owe again, and then again, and again. I paid them so they would leave him breathing. I believed each time would be the last. I believed a mother's heart could bargain with wolves. When the vault began to empty, I realized too late that I had been feeding not wolves, but a monster I created with my forgiveness. I chose an alternate beneficiary so that the burden of that monster would not become yours. But if you have come, it means you are ready to see what I could not say aloud. Forgive me. Or don't. But understand I loved you with everything that was left inside me. Julia. My hands shook violently. The letter curled as my fingers tightened. My vision blurred with tears. I had refused at her funeral, at the house, at the reading room, at every place where grief had passed by and moved on without landing. Now it fell, heavy and cold, rooting itself in my bones. 30 years of lies, not to betray me, but to shield me. 30 years of fear. 30 years of Daniel pulling on her heartstrings like a noose. And she had died carrying the weight alone. I pressed the letter to my forehead. I would have carried it with you, I whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me? A knock on the door made me sit up, wiping my eyes. Frau Keller stepped inside. Are you ready? She asked softly. My voice scraped out of me. Yes. She led me down a narrow staircase into a cold chamber where rows of identical steel doors stretched like ribs inside the belly of some metal beast. She stopped at one labeled C-19. Token, please. I handed her the engraved metal disc. She inserted it into a slot, entered a code on a small keypad, and the vault hissed open. I stepped inside alone. The vault was small, barely large enough for one person, with metal shelves lining the walls. For a moment I thought it was empty. Then my eyes adjusted. There were bundles of cash, some crisp, others old, wrapped in foreign paper bands. There were envelopes, some marked paid, others stamped with threatening symbols I didn't recognize. There were photographs, surveillance-like images of Daniel shaking hands with men whose faces were half hidden, exchanging packages in parking lots at night. There were contracts written in languages I couldn't read, each with Daniel's signature, each with numbers that made my stomach twist. There were also receipts showing payments Julia had made to clear those contracts, payments that matched the withdrawals in the ledger. But the worst thing in the vault wasn't the money or the contracts or the cash. It was a single USB drive in a clear plastic case labeled Evidence in Case of Death. I picked it up. It felt heavier than metal. On the shelf beneath it lay a small note in Julia's handwriting. For Ignacio. For Lucia. Protect yourselves. I closed my hand around the drive and felt something shift inside me. Not fear this time, not grief, but resolve. I had spent my life building things, houses, bridges, schools, solid structures meant to endure storms. Now I would have to dismantle something instead. A monster made of debt and lies, and the blind love of a mother. A monster wearing my son's face. I stepped out of the vault. Have you seen what you needed to see? Frau Keller asked. I've seen enough to know what I need to do, I said. She inclined her head. Then we will prepare the exit documents. As we left the chamber, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Lucia. Dad, Daniel is here. He's demanding to know where you went. He's not calm. Please call me. My blood turned cold. I typed quickly. I'm coming home. Don't let him in. Another message appeared instantly. Too late. He's already inside. The plane hadn't even left Zurich yet, and the monster was already awake. By the time my plane touched down in San Diego, night had already swallowed the coastline. The air smelled like salt and car exhaust, and the faint sweetness of jacaranda trees drifting in from somewhere beyond the parking lot. I moved fast for a man my age, clutching the small duffel bag against my side, the USB drive hidden inside a pocket sewn beneath the lining. My feet ached from the flight, and my back felt like it had aged 5 additional years in 12 hours, but adrenaline kept me upright, pushing me forward like an invisible hand. Lucia's message echoed through my head on a loop. He's already inside. I hurried through the terminal, past families hugging, past businessmen dragging roller bags, past vacationers comparing tan lines. Outside, I called a cab instead of waiting for the car service. I didn't want comfort. I wanted speed. The driver was a young man with tired eyes and a hat pulled low. He barely spoke as I slid into the back seat, only asked, "Where to, sir?" I gave him the address. The cab pulled away from the curb, tires humming over the asphalt. Streetlights blurred past the windows, glowing in streaks of yellow. My fingers tapped against my knee uncontrollably, an old habit I hadn't had since my early construction days, the rhythm I used when checking blueprints, counting measurements, calculating risks. Except now the risk wasn't some collapsing beam or misaligned column. It was my son, my boy, the one Julia had fed for decades, not with food, but with hope she couldn't afford. The cab turned onto our street. Even from a distance, I knew something was wrong. Lucia's car was parked crookedly near the curb. The porch light was on, flickering in a slow, uneven pulse, like a heartbeat running out of strength. The curtains in the front window were drawn halfway. Julia had always closed them completely at night. The cab stopped. My chest tightened. "You sure you want me to leave?" the driver asked when I reached for the door. "Looks tense over there." I didn't answer. I stepped out and closed the door behind me, gripping the banister as I climbed the porch steps. Before I could knock, I heard raised voices from inside. Lucia's voice, shaking but firm, then Daniel's, sharper, louder, with an edge that cut even through the walls. I pushed the door open. They were in the living room, standing on opposite sides of the coffee table. Lucia's arms were crossed tightly over her chest, shoulders drawn in as though protecting herself from a storm. Daniel paced in small, aggressive circles, the gold watch on his wrist catching the light like a blade each time he moved. When he turned and saw me, his expression snapped into something halfway between relief and accusation. "Finally," he said, stepping forward. "Where the hell have you been?" The anger in his voice hit me like a gust of cold wind, but beneath it, I heard something else. Panic. Not the panic of a man worried for his father, but the panic of a man losing control of a narrative he thought he owned. Lucia rushed to my side. "Papa, are you okay? Did you get back safely?" "I'm fine," I said, though my legs trembled. "What's going on?" Daniel scoffed. "What's going on? You tell me." He jabbed a finger at my chest. "You disappear to Europe without telling your own son. You leave Lucia in the dark. You act like some secret agent. What are you hiding?" I stared at him, studying the tightening corners of his jaw, the twitch beneath his left eye, the sheen of sweat on his forehead. All subtle signs, all familiar. Signs I had ignored too many times. "I wasn't hiding," I said quietly. "I was learning." "Learning what?" he snapped. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my coat, pulled out the red notebook, and set it on the table between us. Lucia flinched as if placing it there had been an act of violence. Daniel's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. "What's that?" he demanded. "Your mother's ledger," I replied. "Her truth, 30 years' worth of it." For a moment, Daniel's face betrayed him, just a flicker, a tiny shift in the muscles beside his mouth. Recognition. Fear. I waited for him to deny it, to pretend he didn't know what it was. But he didn't speak. Not yet. I opened the notebook to the page that had kept me awake for the entire flight home. The entry where Julia wrote, "He promised this would be the last time. I believe him because I need to." I turned the book so he could see it. "You drained her," I said, my voice breaking in ways I didn't want it to. "Year after year, debt after debt, lie after lie. You drained your mother until there was nothing left but fear." Lucia's breath caught. Daniel froze. The gold watch gleamed cruelly against the lamplight. "That's not what happened," he said finally, his voice trembling with a mix of outrage and something darker. "You don't understand." "Then explain," I said. "Explain the contracts I found. Explain the men she paid off. Explain why every year she crossed an ocean to refill a vault she should never have needed to create in the first place." His nostrils flared. "What vault?" he asked, too quickly, too sharply. I pulled the small metal token from my pocket, engraved with 717K, and placed it beside the notebook. His eyes locked onto it like a predator scenting blood. "You knew," I said softly. "Maybe not everything, but you knew there was something. Something she kept from us." "She kept it from me too," he shot back. "She never told me she was going to Switzerland." "She told you enough," Lucia whispered. "Enough to keep asking." Daniel turned on her. "You think you're better than me? You think she didn't help you? You were the favorite." "She was protecting you," Lucia interrupted. "Not because you deserved it, but because she was scared of what would happen if she didn't." Daniel's face reddened. "Don't you dare." "What's on the USB, Daniel?" I asked. The room fell dead silent. His eyes snapped to mine. "What?" "The USB drive," I repeated calmly. "The one your mother labeled evidence in case of death." His throat bobbed. Sweat gathered at his hairline, glistening. "I didn't—" "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice finally rising, the dam cracking inside my chest. "Not now. Not after everything." The lights flickered. Lucia gasped. I turned slowly. A shadow shifted near the hallway, just enough motion to break the frame of the room. Someone else was here. Daniel saw my expression and spun around. "Don't move," he shouted into the dark. But the shadow didn't freeze. It advanced. Heavy footsteps, slow, controlled. A man stepped into view, a broad-shouldered figure with a shaved head and a scar running from his ear down to his jaw. He wore a dark jacket and gloves. His eyes were small and flat, like coins pressed into wet clay. "Daniel," I rasped, "who is this?" Daniel didn't answer. The man spoke instead, his voice thick with an unfamiliar accent. "You took something that doesn't belong to you," he said to Daniel. "We warned you what would happen." Lucia backed toward me, trembling. "Papa." "Stay behind me," I whispered. The man stepped forward. "Where is the drive?" he asked. Daniel stammered. I don't have it." "Your mother did," the man corrected, "and now your father does." My stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" The man's lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. "Mrs. Navarro paid us for a long time. Enough to buy time, not enough to buy peace." Every piece clicked into place. Julia hadn't been paying off Daniel's debts. She had been paying these men to stay away, buying his safety a month at a time, until she ran out of money or breath. "The drive," the man repeated, "contains information that belongs to us." "No," I said, voice steadying with a resolve I didn't know I had. "It contains information that belongs to the police." His eyes flattened further. He took another step. "You will give it to me." "Over my dead body," I said. He tilted his head. "That can be arranged." Daniel lunged forward suddenly, desperate, grabbing the man's arm. "Wait! Just wait!" The man shoved him aside effortlessly. Daniel flew into the side table, sending Julia's ceramic angels crashing to the floor, shattering into pieces that sounded like heartbreak. Lucia screamed. The man turned back to me. My hand slipped into my coat, closing around the USB drive. Cold plastic. Warm resolve. "If you take a step closer," I said, "I will swallow this thing before I ever let you touch it." He paused, calculating. A small vibration buzzed in my pocket, Lucia's phone lighting up from a notification. The sound distracted him for a fraction of a second. A fraction was enough. I grabbed the lamp from the side table and swung it with all the strength left in my body. The metal base connected with the man's temple. He staggered. Lucia grabbed Daniel's arm and yanked him away from the chaos. I hit him again, and again, until he fell backward onto the rug, groaning, not unconscious, but close. "Lucia," I gasped, "call the police." She fumbled with her phone, voice shaking as she spoke to the operator. Daniel stared at me, wide-eyed, panting, not with fear of the man on the floor, but with fear of everything crumbling around him. "Dad," he whispered, "I never meant—" "You never meant to get caught," I said. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The man on the floor groaned, rolling onto his side. "This is not over," he hissed. "It is," I said, "for you, and for him." As the sirens closed in, Daniel slumped against the wall, burying his face in his hands. Lucia stood over him, not with pity, but with a grief fiercer than anger. The police stormed in moments later, guns raised, voices commanding. They cuffed the man, searched the house, took statements. When they asked for the drive, I handed it over calmly. "It contains evidence of extortion, money laundering, and organized criminal activity," I said. "My wife kept it to protect us. I'm giving it to you to end this." The officers exchanged looks. One of them nodded slowly. "You did the right thing, sir." I wasn't sure I believed him. When they took Daniel aside to question him, Lucia tightened her grip on my arm. "Papa," she whispered, "what happens now?" I watched as Daniel's shoulders shook, not from fear of prison, but from the sudden loss of the shield he had used his entire life. The shield Julia had built out of love, brick by painful brick, until it crushed her. "Now," I said, my voice rough and tired, "the monster dies." Outside, dawn began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and red. A new day, a hard one, but a free one. I stepped into the sunlight, feeling the weight of the ledger lifted from my chest for the first time in decades. Julia's secrets were no longer chains. They were keys, keys that opened the door to the truth, to justice, and to the peace she had wanted for us all along. I whispered into the warming air, "I'm free now, mi amor, and so are you."